You're listening to WSLR LP 96.5 FM in Sarasota and WBPV LP 100.1 FM in Bradenton. It's 9 a.m. and welcome to Manasota Arts Connection. I'm Jonah Ray, creator and producer of Manasota Arts Connection and now interim host. Manasota Arts Connection is a bi-weekly Saturday morning talk show which highlights artists of color in our community and features all forms of art. I believe that the arts does something for the soul, and Manasota Arts Connection contributes to WSLR's diversification agenda and keeps our Saturday morning lineup positive, entertaining, and lively. If there are artists of color in our community that you would like to hear from on this show, please feel free to email me at ManasotaArtsConnection@gmail.com. Again, it's ManasotaArtsConnection@gmail.com. Today, our guest artist is an award-winning journalist, teaching artist certified in mindfulness, which I would love to hear more about. And he is the creator, host, producer, and writer of Mr. Stevey Meditates on YouTube. He is also a community leader, and the job that I'm most jealous of, he's a dad. Mr. Stevey Jones, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jonah.
I'm so excited that you're here with me. I was just telling you how much I've admired you. We met a couple of months ago back when you were on Manasota Arts Connection talking about your meditations on YouTube, your YouTube channel. And that was a great conversation that you had with Travis. Then you talked about a whole bunch of different things. Mm-hmm. So I'm so excited that you're back on the show this morning.
So thankful to be here today and so thankful to be starting the day on a platform that's, it's here for us. It's here for our community. It's here for all members of our community. So I'm just thankful that you've created, some programming here at this very special community radio station, which has a very long track record of supporting community work in the arts and beyond. So just thankful to be here.
Well, it is truly, I promise you, it's my pleasure. Since the community and the listeners here at WSLR already are familiar with you, there's no need for an icebreaker. So let's get right into,
I love it.
Let's get right into, why I invited you and what sparked my interest and what compelled me really. It really compelled me to have you back on the show, which is your journalism career, specifically your experience being racially profiled as a young writer and journalist at this newspaper during a time when your career was fairly new. So tell us about that experience. Tell us where you were in life, all the little details and how you got to writing the article mm-hmm. and then being awarded for your work.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. I mean, you broke it all down into a very concise summary that as you're telling it, I'm thinking about all these pieces about it. And I didn't think that I would be writing about anything like that. That wasn't anything that I expected or looked for. It was something that just happened. And like all things in life, things happen mm-hmm. and you have a choice to do something about it or not and move on and do something else. And I chose to write about it, because that's what I was doing at the time. So, to kind of paint a picture, it would be, I'm in my mid-20s. This is my first newspaper job. I just got out of college in California. Very excited to work in newspapers. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to write and connect with a community. Mm-hmm. And so I was living in Northern California at this time in a town called Stockton, California. It's just south of Sacramento, just east of the Bay Area. And I was covering the beat would be called crime or would be called the police beat. And so that's what they stick young reporters, cub reporters. That's what they stick us on when we first begin our journey as journalists. We're given pretty much listening to a scanner all day. That's how we used to do it. I'm sure it's different nowadays. And so that's what I was doing. I was doing that for a year. getting to know the community, getting into not always the most prettiest circumstances, considering it was mostly crime that I was covering. And so a lot of late night hours, a lot of late nights, early mornings, getting stories into the newspaper. And then, and so was doing that for a while. And during one of these late night shifts, I was leaving my job, which was downtown. And ironically, the police station and the newspaper in the city are a block away from each other. So we're neighbors for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
And so as I was pulling out, going home about 11 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock, I'm heading out, going home, and I noticed there's a police car pulling up behind me, and lights start coming on. And so, of course, I pull over, and police officer, comes to the window and asks, hey, we saw something hanging on your window. And I looked from him to my window, and I looked back at him, and I was confused and asked, well, what are you talking about? And he pointed to the air freshener that was hanging on my rearview mirror. And then he noticed something wrong with the windshield. There was some crack or some kind of little thing on it. And he said, hey, you know what? Not hey, you know what, but I'm going to have to give you a ticket for that. And so me being the reporter that I was and being confused by the whole situation, was asking, so am I getting a ticket for the air freshener or for the crack? Because, you're referring to two different things. I'm confused. And so he started fumbling with his words. And then I started kind of working out in my mind, hey, you know what? This seems so weird that I just asked the question that was on my mind. Are you profiling me? And he just said, no, sir, broke eye contact, went back to his car, came back and gave me a ticket.
And a lot of specifically young black men experience very similar situations. And sometimes they go left and it ends up being a very traumatic experience, and sometimes, unfortunately, a deadly experience.
Absolutely.
So
I was very aware of that. Keenly aware of driving while black. And what you want to do as a black man in America is you don't want to think about the fact that there are people in authority, people with badges that are racist.
Yes, who
and
should
don't
be
like
protecting
you.
us.
Right, so it's confusing.
Yes.
Fortunately and unfortunately, before that happened, I'd been stopped by the cops all the time. What was different is that I didn't have the voice to say anything about it, or a platform to share my experience about it, which came later. Of course, there's a frustration. Of course, did I do something wrong? You're thinking through all these things, but you're also thankful that you went through an experience that could have went left, but didn't.
Well, thankfully it didn't go left.
Right.
And you were able to write about your experience being racially profiled, which earned you a journalism award and a fellowship with the Feature Writers of America. Is that correct?
Yes. And I made the name, they've changed their name over the years, so I think that name might be updated by now. So It might be like the Society of Feature Journalists or something like that. But yes.
And so when you wrote about your experience, what was the response from your neighbors, the police department?
Well, when you're working for a mainstream media company, who don't have many, and really at that time were trying to have more diverse voices in the newspaper, when you approach really a group of mostly white, middle-aged men about an experience like that, that's the first layer of kind of either reaffirming your experience or not. So that was the first step, was going to my editor and saying, hey, this happened. Fortunately, he was an ally and someone who was familiar with the struggles that folks that are considered outsiders in America go through. So I was very lucky in that I had a voice, which I think is important when you're trying to share these experiences, these uncomfortable, these common, these racist experiences. It's important to have people that understand what's going on with that. And it's important that you articulate it. Okay. So it's important that you come through the emotions of that. So there's a step before that I had to experience, which was, why are they effing with me? That would be my mindset at 25.
Yeah.
Why are they picking on me?
And so the editor was okay with you writing this?
Yes.
And releasing.
The editor was very supportive.
Excellent.
We'd done a series of stories before then that touched on profiling, driving while black, police brutality, and this just was one of those things where he was like, yes, go ahead, we'll read it. We put it out quickly, and the response was, we're talking the late 90s, so a lot of editorials written and mailed, not too many emails back then, but a lot of phone calls in support and not in support. There's actually some people that we actually heard from, other black men in the community who'd experienced worse run-ins with the law, and that became a story as well. So it was one of those unfortunate things that you end up turning something that, and this happens in life, that bad things will happen to you. They're bound to happen to you. It's part of being a human. It's what you do with that. Yeah. Because that's an opportunity. You do need to reflect on it. And hopefully you're coming out and trying to come out of these negative experiences with a positive outcome. Because ultimately that's what you want to do. Is have something positive.
A lot of blacks, period, not just men, experience these things on a regular basis. Sometimes it's publicized. Nowadays, it's publicized because of cell phones and modern technology.
Yes. Oh, bless technology right now. Bless body cams.
Yes.
Bless.
And then sometimes people don't get the opportunity to share their story. So I'm so glad that you were able to write the article. This won you your first award. Is that correct?
Yes. First major award, as a journalist. And I do got to slip in here something, that I don't want anybody to overlook. Our interactions with law enforcement require us to think. Yeah. In that moment, what is the best outcome for me and for the people that I'm with right now? And so it's imperative that you do one thing if you're pulled over. So whoever's listening, I'm especially talking to my young men of color, young women of color, take a breath. Take a big breath when you see those lights behind you in that mirror. Take a nice big breath and then think, what is the best outcome? What is the best outcome that I want to happen? And then act. That will help you with the words that you're going to use to talk to Officer Smith. It could be Officer Jones. It could be Officer Jerome. It could be Officer John, whoever it is. But take a big breath and think. Okay? Now, that's just for my civilians. That's who I'm talking to. I'm talking to the people who follow the law. Everyone else, I can't talk to and I can't talk about. But I'm hoping that you understand what I'm saying.
I certainly understand what you're saying. As a professional journalist, you try to stick with delivering the news, not being a part of the news.
True.
So in your situation, how did you deal with being the news all of a sudden? How did you deal with that mentally and emotionally?
I didn't like it, to be totally honest with you.
You didn't like the spotlight?
I didn't like the spotlight. I didn't want for me to be the story. Being a young reporter, you're into the work. Your job is the work and focusing on the work and doing the best work that you can. Yeah. So to do something where now not only are we doing the work, but now we're addressing a grievance and with some emotions tied to it. Yeah. So there's some work that needs to be done within yourself as you're creating this story, you know, and taking in this attention, because it's not just attention from your editor or from your newspaper and your colleagues. Now the public understands, hey, exactly. This is someone in our community that's going on. And at times you might think to yourself, and this happens, and I can only speak to my experience as a black man in America. Many times when you're faced in these situations and you're dealing with mostly white people in these authority positions, it almost makes you second guess. Did this really happen to me? Is my experience really real? And that's when you really need to listen to, some people call it your gut. I call it my ancestors. I just listen to that voice that's telling me, yes, no matter what happens, we're going to put this out, regardless of what the outcome is, because we know it's going to help someone else, someone that's not as knowledgeable as I am through this experience. Yeah.
Well, friends, if you're just joining us, you're tuned in to Manasota Arts Connection. I'm here with the amazing Mr. Stevey Jones. He's a award-winning journalist, a local teaching artist here in our community, and he is also a YouTuber. I would say a social media expert. But he's here in the studio live with me. We're talking about his journalism career and being racially profiled at the very beginning of his career. And he is really the definition of black excellence. Educated and so articulate. The mesmerizing voice, I love. But you actually are really a down-to-earth, really sweet guy. And I appreciate you coming in this morning and taking the time to share your story with us and tell us your story about how you earned your first award as a journalist. But after writing that article, you didn't stop there and you wrote many other articles. And so tell us about the other historical articles that you wrote about African Americans in history.
Absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, it's kind of hard to live up to all those accolades, and I appreciate it, my friend. And I just want to let you know how thankful I am to you and to what you've created to allow me to come to a place like this that's safe, that feels welcoming to others. It's not very common. So I'm just very thankful for you, for WSLR, to have this kind of space, which is so needed right now in this time and in our community. So with that being said, I just want to say that article and the recognition of that article did change the trajectory of my journalism career. It allowed my bosses to trust me more, to investigate and explore these topics in our community. So as soon as, something came through that I had an idea for, most times just because of being able to articulate and do a story of that nature, they were very comfortable with, go ahead. So for instance, when a shoebox of letters written by freed slaves who had been essentially shipped back to Africa after the Civil War, when a box of letters from slaves came through that newspaper, it was given to me, and it was actually addressed to me. And that was one of those examples of going to my boss and saying, hey, check this out. Like, can you believe this? And it was really delivered from a family of descendants of slave owners, of a family who shared their story of being slave owners from the South, losing everything during the war after the Union beat the Rebs, and moving across to California and sharing a little bit about the fact that before they left to California, they freed their slaves in a little-known program that the United States ran for only very few years, where it was a Back to Africa movement, literally promoted by church organizations, white church organizations, abolitionists, of course, and the U.S. government. That collaboration led to several ships with hundreds of Americans going back to the country of Liberia.
And you were singled out to get that information.
Yes, it was by a family who had read some of the stories we had started doing that were really focused on the African American experience in that city and the African American history in that city.
Yeah.
And there was, like I said, doing a story like that garnered the trust of my bosses for us to explore that rich, untold history, which every city that has any African American in it has, like any other city with other cultures as well.
Well, I call that divine order for you to be the one singled out to get that information so that you can write about it and share that information and put it out there for people to be able to gain knowledge. That's divine order, in my opinion. That's my opinion, folks. But I personally think that that journalists then or journalism is how we make sense of things and how we understand the world. Again, that's why I'm compelled. That's why I was compelled to study journalism myself in school, and had a desire to pursue that as a career, because journalism holds our community leaders and government accountable.
Absolutely.
Like they held the police department in the city that profiled you accountable.
Absolutely.
But we're pushed for time. I told you at the beginning of the show.
I know, my friend.
This little 30 minutes is going to go by so quick.
It is.
And we're going to not get to everything. And there's so much that I could talk to you about. I could sit here for hours and just talk to you.
I think we could. And it would be a good back and forth, because I want to know more about you too. So.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. But let's chat a little bit about this Black History Month YouTube video that you created and plugged Manasota Arts Connection and WSLR in. So we really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
But you looked like you were having a blast when you did that video.
It was awesome to do, to talk about heritage, to talk about history, to really appreciate the experience of our ancestors, of all ancestors. Yeah. And a lot of people want to shy away from Black history, Black excellence, Black heritage, especially in these times. It's almost, we're in this weird time where just about anything Black or anything white is a hot button issue.
Yeah.
And it's a shame, because it forces people to not talk, to not share.
Or get defensive.
To be more worried about being called a racist than examine their racist views and behavior.
Yes.
Taking our conversation into where it's going right now, that experience, being profiled, the experience of being a journalist, being someone who, in my journalism, in my art form, incorporates my Blackness, that is part of the enthusiasm for my work.
Excellent. Well, you certainly looked like you were having a good time. And one thing that you, or the very first thing that you said on the video, was that Black history matters.
Yes.
And you also talked about exploring the different ways to celebrate Black History Month. And you gave 3 ways to better understand and celebrate Black History Month. You want to talk about that for just a minute?
Let's do that. Ways that you can support Black History Month, not just in February, but throughout the year. One way, shop Black businesses.
Yeah.
Go on the internet. Look in the phone book. Go look for them. Support them. There are a plethora, and that word, it means there's a lot of Black businesses in Sarasota. Black folks doing great things, creating great things, providing great services. A good place to start, second tip, would be going online. And a good place to start would be support Sarasota Manatee Black Business Group on Facebook. Fantastic group to be part of, plugged in completely to our Black businesses and supporters of Black business. I love going to that page. They've been a big supporter of Mr. Stevey Meditates, Mr. Stevey and Friends, which we do with the Van Wezel Performing Arts Hall. They're very, very supportive. They're there. If you can't find anything, ask a friend. Email that one black friend you have, or those 5 black friends you have. But put your money where your mouth is basically what I'm saying in terms of doing this in February and all year long. It's not just February.
And you know, that was on the video. That was the last thing that you said of the 3 ways to understand and celebrate Black History Month. And I put a note here about that particular statement, support black businesses. But a lot of times people get confused about that. And the thing that I love that you said is to support black owned businesses all throughout the year, not just during Black History Month. And here's my personal take on that subject. And just to take it a little bit further, black businesses doesn't mean cheap, and it doesn't mean free. What it means is that person is trying to create their own seat at the table. So don't expect a free handout from the black business or a cheap handout from the black business just because they're your friend or your family member. Instead, just try to support them. We don't go to these big chain stores and debate or negotiate the price down because my friend is the manager. So just support black businesses because we're trying to have a seat at the table just like everybody else. And we deserve a seat at the table because we're just as educated. We're just as articulate. And I can go on and on and on, but it's not about me and my point. It's about Mr. Stevey Jones this morning, Black Excellence.
That is a crowd applauding and cheering everything that you just said. What? I could not have said it better, and I don't know how much time's left. I can't think of a better way to end, or at least start bringing down this conversation than what you just said. There's nothing that I could say that could top that.
Well, we don't have but 3 more minutes, okay. So I want to make sure that I get to those other 2 points. Yes, the other point was Black History Month Black history starts in Africa.
Yes.
Not with slavery in America. That was the very first point that you made.
I think it's the most important point.
Yes.
And I think that's the point that we need to let the little ones know.
Yeah.
I think far too often, I can just draw on my experience in school, in grammar school, and part of this is my motivation in being a teaching artist. There's a lot of things that we learned and how we learned them that just don't work today. There's better ways. And I think one of the better ways to teach black history is to start in where it starts from.
Yes.
Where Africans were stolen and taken from, which is Africa. Stressing that will make us ignore, or at least be able to, not so much ignore, be able to balance the horrors of coming to America.
Yeah.
You know, when you have ancestors who are kings, queens, princesses and princes, peasants, of everything, when you have and you start right at the root, then you get that joy, that magic that you just don't seem to hear when blacks come to America.
Absolutely. So you step right into the other point that you made on your video, which is to understand that Black History Month Black history is American history.
It is
because really Africans built America.
Yes.
If the truth be told, Africans built America, and we were stripped of what we knew and basically all of our freedoms. We were stripped of everything.
Yes. I'm absolutely. We have to start with facts, not with the feelings of either racist or people who want to promote racism.
Yes.
We don't need to worry about people who want to believe in conspiracies or these old racist tropes that constantly seem to come up.
Yes. So. Well, we're pushed for time, and I hate to end it, but I'm going to have to end it. So tell people how they can reach you. You're on social media?
Yes, I am. So I have a channel that's dedicated to mindfulness and arts education. It's called Mr. Stevey Meditates. It's on YouTube. We're also on Facebook and on LinkedIn. We are very proud to be helping local nonprofits and communities create programming that addresses and goes in and welcomes diversity, welcomes